Well, hello and Happy New Year. So today I'm going to go over what has taken place in this past year. And I'm not really going to get into the Bible an awful lot today, but I am going to be comparing prophecy with what's currently going on in our world. So, in this past year, we have seen so many things come to pass and that reflect Bible prophecy, and that includes a growing delusion. And I would say there are some that are coming out of the delusion, but there's still many that are involved in it, and it's kind of scary, But I continue to pray for these people that their eyes and their ears will be opened. And another thing that we're seeing is, and has been occurring since his first presidency, the fact that many are deserting the faith to follow him. And that's part of prophecy too. So we can't forget, when we're focusing in on a man as possibly being the Antichrist, we can't forget that the church plays a part in the last days, how we respond, how we react, and who we are during these last days. And the Bible does talk about, the great falling away, and it talks about so many under delusion, and we have to be careful of deception. Jesus warned in Matthew 24 3 or 4 times about deception. So it's going to be running rampant during this time. But let's take a look at the very first thing that the Bible talks about that begins the tribulation, and that's Revelation chapter 6. When you look at Revelation chapter 6, verse 2, it talks about the fact that the Antichrist, he comes on the scene, and he goes out conquering and to conquer. So this very first seal, this is what kicks off the tribulation, that and the Daniel 9:27 peace treaty. So these two things kind of go hand in hand. And we know for sure that, the tribulation does start with this first seal. There's no doubt in our minds about that. So it's the question, is he the Antichrist? Because if he's the Antichrist, has this seal opened or has it not? But we'll see. So since his election, has he proven, do you think, to be a conqueror? And that's the question that I was trying to look at here. So let's look at his authoritarian playbook, okay? We have, since he's been president, we have actually bombed 7 countries. We have bombed Yemen, Somalia, Iraq, Iran, Syria, and Nigeria. And we have now begun controlling Venezuela. So he's managed to take a country, and he's threatening to take others. So, and we've seized oil tankers. We've threatened to take Greenland and Canada, and made threats against Cuba, Mexico, and Colombia. So, and today many are saying Greenland is next. And you know what? I believe it, because I believe he's the leading candidate for the Antichrist. So he's going to go out conquering and to conquer. That's just the way it's going to happen. The Bible says it. So he, honestly too, most of us don't know this, but we're establishing a military base in Damascus. Did you know that? It's if you look it up, it's all over the news. So, and it's rumored that we will have another military base outside of Gaza. So he's getting his people in place. He is doing the things he needs to do so that he can be in the position he needs to be in. Just like taking Venezuela. Why do you think he would take it? It gives him so much control. He who controls the oil, he can easily conquer other countries just by controlling natural resources. And we know that. So not only are we establishing military bases, we have changed the name of the Gulf of Mexico. We've changed the names of buildings. We have, changed the Department of Defense to the Department of War. I mean, he is just changing all of these things. And, if you look in Israel, how many things have been named after him? He puts his name on everything. Isn't that odd? And he will probably put his name on people by the time he's done. So, and not just is he doing these things overseas, but he's placed military in U.S. cities, has he? So, and what's he done that for? So that he could deport people, he can incarcerate people, and he's created his own little police force that's larger than any other ICE, right? So why did his administration decide to do this? And sweep across our country this way, with the military to help them. I mean, think about this. Could they use this against not just immigrants? Sure, they could. They could take American citizens, They could do anything they wanted, really. So, and not just is he controlling people by putting the military in the cities and, abducting these people. He's worked overtime to control the narrative through manipulating and suppressing the media. And, if you don't think he has, I mean, look at TikTok, look at all these other things, how he's controlling the message, okay? So he's used coarse rhetoric to try to intimidate and bully people. He's hijacked federal power to decide who owns the media that covers him even. He's putting his people in charge of the media. That's what he's doing. He's had costly lawsuits, against these media outlets. He's shut down government-funded media outlets, and he's limited access to certain media, hasn't he? So he's controlling the narrative, and people need to see this. We're not seeing the truth. We don't know the truth. So, and not just is he using the media, and he's using the military, and he's using all these other things, he's gotten into the church. I mean, he has a religious leader working in the White House, doesn't he? Because he's using religious organizations to spew out political propaganda so that he can control people, so that he can control the narrative behind, in the churches. And he has managed to hush critics and prosecute his enemies. Now, this is really, I mean, if you were to watch an Antichrist movie from years ago, what did they do, right? And I don't think they're accurate, but it's interesting that Christians who don't believe he's the Antichrist, they'll watch these movies and they say, oh, the Antichrist will control the media. The Antichrist will do all these things. That's exactly what he's doing. He's doing those very things that you said he would do for years, So look at what he did to late night TV, right? And he's prosecuting and investigating his political foes, isn't he? So we should have known, though, really, that he was going to do this because he said he would, didn't he? When he was running for election, he told his supporters to not merely see him as a candidate. He said that he is their retribution. That's what he said. And since becoming president, his administration has investigated scores of adversaries and revoked their security clearance. So, according to Reuters, the number of people exceeds 470 targets of retribution under Trump's leadership, from federal employees and prosecutors to universities and media outlets. The extent of this list identifies the effort made by the president and his administration to punish dissent and reshape the government. That's exactly what he's done. He has reshaped the government, and he is trying to stop. Now, why do you think that, the people in Congress and all this, our political leaders, why they're not doing anything? They're afraid of him. They're actually afraid of this man. So look at Daniel 7:25. What does he do? He seeks to change the times and the laws. Has he done this? He absolutely has. So his administration believes that they can act with impunity when it comes to the law and the U.S. Constitution. In a May 4th interview on Meet the Press, President Trump was asked if he would uphold the Constitution in regards to immigration. He responded by saying, I don't know. That's what he said, I don't know. So his first day in office was marked by executive orders and actions that defy the Constitution and long-standing legal norms by depriving babies of their constitutionally guaranteed citizenship. And he's still trying to rip that away, while announcing emergency declarations that would give the military the authority to facilitate mass deportation. So that's what he did. See, he found all these loopholes to bend and twist things to benefit him so that he could do whatever he wanted. And Congress has done nothing to stop him. So, and really what this is, it's a lawless takeover of our country. And, you know, they said, okay, well, we're not going to deal with it. We're too afraid. We'll let the Supreme Court deal with it. What's the Supreme Court done? Nothing, really. They haven't done anything. And there's nothing anyone can do when he's got the DOJ in his back pocket. So then, of course, we have Doge, which was created his first day via executive order. So he created a department illegally. You don't just create departments. That's not how this works. So through Doge, though, they've managed to destroy government agencies and jobs, haven't they? They've shut down international aid that's led to what is estimated as hundreds of thousands of deaths. You know, people need to get vaccinated. They need medications. They need nutrition and these kinds of things, or they die. And somehow, this is the party of pro-life, right? Not so, not so. So, you know, and they infiltrated personal information and data and installed AI. Yeah, so they got into our personal information. And they looked at it, you know, they don't have the right. Unless I say that you have the right to see my personal information, you shouldn't have the right. It's personal. So, you know, speaking of AI though, most of us know that AI and technology is necessary to build and control the final empire and the mark of the beast. So Donald Trump's administration has passed legislation that's made it impossible to limit AI. And so we can't even limit it. And it's going to destroy scores of jobs. According to Goldman Sachs, they're claiming it'll probably 6 to 7% of the workforce will be displaced, which is roughly over 11 million people. So, and that's probably a conservative figure, some say, but we won't really know. So these are people that are going to, essentially, they're going to have to retrain for different jobs. Now, how do you retrain for different jobs? It doesn't happen overnight, right? So you need funding. What would you have to do? Go to college? But yet they're limiting, you know, the ability for people to go to college. And they're limiting benefits for people. So talk about pulling the carpet out from under people, right? So let's stop, you know, we're only going to have Section 8 for so long. We're going to stop SNAP benefits. We're going to stop, you know, student loans. We're going to, you know, so basically, what's going to happen to these people? What's going to happen to them? That's the question. So we're going to see the elimination of many unskilled jobs because of AI. And he doesn't want any restraints on it. So, but honestly, I mean, AI needs to come about because, you know, it's going to be used in Mark of the Beast technology, I'm sure. But really what it's going to do is it's going to make the people in this country more dependent on the government. That's what it's going to do. And, people of the world, they're going to become more dependent on the government, which gives the government more power. It empowers them, and they can control us through it. So Doge, under Elon Musk and his team, led an effort to link government databases. Now, how many of you have heard about this? Because I looked into this, and I'm talking about reputable sources, okay? This is frightening. This is really frightening. So the federal government knows, they know our parents' names. They know my mother's maiden name, for instance. And they know our bank account numbers, and they know the student debt that we hold. They know our disability statuses. They know who employs us. They know how much we make. And that's just the start. That's just the start of what they know, because there are over 300 more categories of data that they compiled, and they put all this together, over 300. And the truth is that typically these details about our personal lives and, all that sort of thing, they've been kept disconnected in separate systems across the federal government. For example, we have the Treasury, and we have the Social Security Administration, the Department of Education, and so forth. They're not brought together, these systems. They're separate. So, and it's to protect the people of this country, not just from the leaders of this country. Imagine if a foreign government hacked in and they got all of your information in one place. Imagine that. Or if the government wanted to use all that information that was compiled, they could. It would be so easy to say, you know what, you're saying things I don't like, so I think I'm going to cut off your Social Security. Or I think I'm just going to call your employer and I'm going to get you fired, and they could. But in March, President Trump signed an executive order calling for the consolidation of these segregated records, creating a complete and in-depth data profile of every single American. Having too much information, of course, gives them too much power. And that's the truth. Just like they used information from the IRS to go after immigrants. Okay? So this is serious. This is really serious. The government shouldn't have the right to have this kind of information against its people. This creates a really bad situation. So, and in the final portion of this video, I want to go over how the leading candidate for the Antichrist, our president, how he is conquering the world, and how he's fulfilling Daniel 9:27, possibly, and Daniel 7:23 through 25, the final empire, how he's creating the final empire, possibly. Okay, so I recognize that this is my perspective at this time based on what we're looking at, what's going on in the world. And I recognize that I could be wrong about all of it, right? That this may not be the Antichrist and this may not be the final beast system, but it may. So the best thing we can do is keep an eye on it, because we need to be warned. We need to be ready for what's coming. So remember, he says, when you see the abomination of desolation, remember, he says to flee. So we need to be aware. We need to be watching for those things the Bible warns us of, to be aware, to be ready, and, to deal with it the way God wants us to. So, since World War II, the year 2024 to 2025 saw the greatest number of countries involved in some form of conflict. Okay, that's how serious it's getting. And they didn't have all the data for 2025 through 2026 at that point. So, but they said it was on track to be worse than the previous year. So currently, though, there are numerous active wars and conflicts, including the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the Syrian civil war, the Yemeni civil war, and significant instability in regions like Ethiopia, Myanmar, Sudan, Afghanistan, alongside numerous terrorist insurgencies and regional tensions in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. You know, it seems crazy, doesn't it? That there's all this conflict, all these tensions going on, and yet everybody is calling for peace, aren't they? They're tired. And I don't blame them. I'm tired of it, you know? So, but I think really it set us up to be in the same place that we were after World War I and World War II. So the world after World War I and World War II, they were tired of conflict and war, and they wanted nothing more than peace in their life. They wanted opportunity. They wanted prosperity. You know, all the same things that people are crying for now. That's what they were looking for then. It's a world that's exhausted. So, and even our elections, they kind of reflect that when people voted for somebody that supposedly wouldn't be a warmonger, you know, that we could have the golden age again, and, you know, all these things, how things were going to be great. We're going to make America great again. Wasn't that the idea? So, but that's honestly what happened after World War I. You know, it birthed the League of Nations after World War I because people were so tired of war and all this, you know, so they created this League of Nations to bring about world peace. But it was ineffective, just like today. The UN has been largely ineffective. So, you know, you had the League of Nations created, and it morphed into the United Nations, which, you know, has been up and running now for, you know, quite some time. But even though, you know, we have the UN, and, you know, some would say I mean, really, how many people think it's been successful? It really hasn't prevented much for conflict. All they can do is, you know, make a few statements and pass this or that, you know, or maybe some sanctions or whatever. But what good has it done? And it really hasn't done any good. It really hasn't maintained international peace. It hasn't really promoted human rights or fostered cooperation to solve global problems. It's so ineffective, and it's kind of a joke, and people are like, why are we paying for this, right? And I can pretty much agree with that. I don't see that it's done much good, but, you know, the fact that it hasn't met its objectives, that's why I think people they want to be done with it. So, you know, this has been the way since 1920 when the League of Nations was created. You know, we have been looking to build some kind of a mechanism for peace. And it's failed. Largely, it's failed. So, you know, and this is what I found so interesting. And this is why I'm bringing this up. So, when you look at September 23rd, 2025, when President Trump made his address to the UN, what did he say? And I don't know if you caught this, but I sure did. So, he started out, of course, boasting about himself and, you know, talking about his many great accomplishments and how wonderful and great he is, you know. And after he spent this time magnifying himself, he took the time to declare how inept the UN is and belittle the UN, which, I mean, they are, but still, you know. But this is the part that shocked me. And many people missed this. You know, I didn't hear anybody talk about this. So around 13 minutes into the video, he said that he was offering a hand of American leadership and friendship to any nation who wanted to join him in forging a safer and more prosperous world. So this is what he did. After he got done bashing the UN, he's basically used the UN platform to bash them and to announce the creation of a new empire. That's what it sounded like to me. So, and he said a safer, more prosperous world. He's promising peace. He's promising prosperity. And he wants people to join him. But what did he really do? He went out and he took a country. Does that really sound like, and who's going to stop him? Who can make war against the beast, right? So, but he wants other nations to join him. Did anybody else hear this? I heard it. So oddly enough, though, about 6 days later on September 29th, what did he announce 6 days after he wanted other nations to join him in this new conglomeration that he was creating? He announced the peace plan for Israel, the 20-point peace plan. So, and, this peace plan, it's not just, a simple agreement, right? So it includes a board of peace and an international peacekeeping force, doesn't it? So what did he do? What did he have to do, though, to make it legally binding? He had to go to the UN. So on November 17th, 2025, the UN Security Council adopted Resolution 2803. So his plan, they adopted his plan, and what his plan really does is it joins the Arab world to the European world, doesn't it? And these are two very different ideologies, two very different types of people, kind of like iron and clay. They don't mix, do they? So, and that Islam has very different ideas about the way things should be run than the Western world. It's very different. So, UN Resolution 2803 establishes a two-pillar framework for post-conflict Gaza. Now, 2 pillars is an interesting concept too, because, there's 2 feet. There's 10 toes, but there's 2 feet. And it's kind of interesting that, the one pillar would be the Board of Peace, which sets the framework and coordinates funding for the redevelopment of Gaza, right? But the problem is this Board of Peace, the UN has no power in this Board of Peace. They have no ability to control who's on it, nothing, okay? So it's a class by itself. It's a unique entity or situation. But who does control who's on the Board of Peace? Donald Trump does. He is the one that decides who's on the Board of Peace. And guess how many members are going to be on the Board of Peace? 10. That's what he said. Now, could it change? Sure, it could change. But so far, that's what we're hearing. It's going to be 10. So the resolution, though, that the UN adopted for this to make it legal, there's no guarantee of Palestinian representation and no mechanism for UN oversight. Okay? So there's no oversight. They have no power. They have no control. Donald Trump is the only one that has power and control over the whole thing, which is crazy to me. Why would we give this to one man? And they'll give their power and control to the beast. They already are. So the idea here in the creation of this agreement may or may not be the Daniel 9:27 covenant. So it might be the framework for the confirmed agreement. So we really don't know. We have to wait and see. Is this the agreement? Is this the beast, the final empire created in Revelation 13? We don't know. So we need to be watching this, though, because it certainly does fit the bill, doesn't it? That's the scary part. It fits the bill. And so the question I want to ask is, do you see what I see? That's really the question. Do we all see the same thing? So I see a government seeking and gaining control, a conqueror seeking to conquer, a man who magnifies himself, the creation of the mark of the beast, and the possibility of the final empire. If this is how it appears, 2026 will be the year we see our government exercise even more control. And we will see advances in technology, growing poverty, more sickness and disease, an escalation in the number of conflicts. More than anything, we will likely have our suspicions confirmed about whether he is the Antichrist or not. We will know. So that is why I'm calling 2026 the year of revelation. And we're going to see a lot of things change in 2026. So, are you ready for the year 2026? Because I personally am not. I'm really kind of apprehensive about it because who knows where this is going, right? But one thing I know is if we pay attention to the past and we look at the Word of God, we do have some direction there. So if we're right, hopefully we'll all be ready. So that's what I would suggest for you. Get ready, because this may be it. Okay? But anyways, I want to thank you for spending time with me. And I hope that this video helps you be prepared. And I hope that, we can all be ready for what's coming. But thank you. And I pray that you're blessed. And I pray that you're safe. And God bless you. Bye.